Hello everyone, welcome to the weekly recap. There are going to be 2 weekly recap videos because there's so much going on this week. So we will link them together so that you can see both of them.
Yeah.
This one has some interesting interconnected topics, starting with the official announce of the delay of Crackdown.
Yeah.
So I think you, as well as probably most of our audience, know that my stance on that is that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Because anytime a developer needs more time, more polishing, more anything, give the devs what they need.
Yeah, definitely.
We want them to have what they need. But I do think it's almost a little bit funny because, people were being so harshly critical of Crackdown 3 for no reason. In my opinion, no reason. And I think that's ultimately what probably caused this delay, but it might actually end up favoring Microsoft and the Crackdown franchise. So to me, the main thing that I think of here is I look at a game and I decide how it looks or how I think it looks based on the predecessors to that game if it's a sequel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Crackdown 3 looks tremendously better than Crackdown 2, which I believe is Crackdown 3's job. However, I think that maybe because it was going to be showcased with X, people were expecting something a little more realistic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that we kind of discovered in all of this, and it's still rumor, that they actually might have been considering releasing the game in 2 parts.
Yeah, we heard some rumors that seemed very credible that they were thinking of doing just a single player this year,
and then maybe later.
Possibly the multiplayer in the summertime of next year, which I think would have probably been a disaster.
Would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
I don't think very many people want a split game like that.
No.
I think you have to come out with your content at the same time.
Same time, definitely.
So if that had been Microsoft's plan, maybe all the criticism helped them.
Yeah.
Because then they were like, yikes, we got to polish this. People are already mad, so they're going to be mad no matter what we're doing. So that might have actually corrected that. And I think that we very recently saw what happens when you release half a game.
Mm-hmm.
Which happened with one particular title, No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky. Mm-hmm.
So No Man's Sky released last year, had talked about and advertised being a single player and multiplayer, and came out with no multiplayer.
Yeah.
To the point where I think it was actually planned kind of right up to the end. Somebody had even found it on their game case.
Well, even more than that, like the main head developer guy was actually basically telling people, oh, it's in there, and just the chances of you finding another player out there are so minute that, just don't expect it. And it turns out it's just not even really a part of the game. So they were lying about the game.
So they lied about it, covered it up on their actual cases, and then tried to kind of run with the narrative of like, no, it's there. It's just, you're in a multiplayer universe. You'll run into somebody someday.
Mm-hmm.
We all know that's not how multiplayer works.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening in response to that, I think is really our central point and our central problem.
Mm-hmm.
So they released a new update in the last week or so to essentially fix all the things that had been promised and not delivered from the original. And Ryan McCaffrey from IGN tweeted about it. And, I think that one of the things that's kind of our big discussion today is these influential sites. You got IGN, you got some of the others, Eurogamer, that are GameSpot, that are very influential and that are just saying and doing and releasing things that are just very unprofessional and...
Well, not just unprofessional. It's also, there's a very interesting, we've commented on in our previous videos at least once, it's some of the timing that you see.
Very interesting timing.
Yeah, if you see one thing come out from one site, sometimes literally within the same day, within hours.
They all come out with the same thing.
Or a very similar, or in some cases, not necessarily similar topics or discussions or opinion pieces, but...
Similar narratives.
Another narrative that you can add to the first narrative. And it's like one of them will give a piece of this puzzle. 4 hours later, somebody else releases another piece of that little puzzle. Yeah. Later on in the night, then another...
And they're trying to build specifically a certain puzzle.
Yeah.
They're trying to control the narratives all over the place. Mm-hmm. Something big will be happening for one platform.
They'll ignore it.
And they'll magically start talking about the other one who literally has nothing going on.
Yeah.
So he tweets about No Man's Sky, and I think we should note...
Which is also weird.
Because I think we should note he's the Xbox guy.
He's the Xbox guy.
For IGN.
At IGN. He runs the podcast
for Xbox.
It is an Xbox-centric podcast. No Man's Sky is not an Xbox
at
game.
all.
In fact, it was largely pushed last year as a PS4 exclusive type game. Now, we know that it's available on other platforms, but that's not the way the media treated it. They treated it like this was a big thing for Sony.
It was a big thing launch
for PS4 in particular. And it wasn't really that big of a launch. It was actually more of an indie game.
Little indie game.
That was overhyped so much by the Jeff Keighlys of the world, by the Ryan McCaffrey types of the world.
Yep.
And then you have a year later, this stuff is coming out, and what essentially did he say about this?
So I have these tweets were actually deleted from everything we can figure out.
Yeah, that's also weird.
Which is also weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a screenshot of the direct tweets, so I'll read them. If you're talking crap about today's big No Man's Sky update because it wasn't there at launch or some other dumb reason, reevaluate your life. And then he tweets himself, he comments to himself, a small team shipped an ambitious project, then spent a year with their heads down to make it better for free.
So he just wanted to...
Get less entitled, gamers. Sorry, I had to get that one.
Get less entitled. So he just wanted to talk to himself on Twitter for a little bit. Just apparently, that's what no big deal.
That or he had way more to say than was necessary and he couldn't fit that tweet.
No, there's no agenda.
There's no, it's just...
Now so get less entitled. All right, that really caps it off. And
get less entitled.
And then what he said in the first half, which is if anybody's talking crap, but he didn't use that word.
There was profanity in the tweet, which I've removed.
So he's angry about this too.
He's angry.
This is weird.
He's cussing. This is someone who's from one of the big sites.
Yeah.
Like you would expect professional communication at the very least.
On Twitter.
Not cuss words in your tweets. There's never a reason you need to cuss in a tweet. It's never necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, reevaluate your life. So he cusses at you, says, reevaluate your life, and then says, get less entitled. All in relation to something PS4 related, first of all.
Yeah.
That was largely controversial as a big issue when it happened. Nobody was happy about this. Nobody was like man, No Man's Sky is exactly what they said it was going to be. Nobody was happy about that.
90% of the gamers that were sold the lie about this game and ended up buying it full price complained.
Got their money back, a lot of them.
Well, I don't know about that, but they were upset.
They were very upset, and they started having to refund games and stuff. It was a major problem for the PlayStation people.
So we have that. So we have the Xbox guy taking up for the PlayStation branded game.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting.
So then...
Doesn't end there.
Yeah. So then, within a few days of that, again, the timing is always interesting, Recore announces that Microsoft announces that Recore is getting its definitive edition. We all kind of knew there was going to be an HDR update and stuff like that. So they announced
at least a little bit of an update, yeah.
Yeah, so they announced a definitive edition which contains a bunch of content, the HDR update, and so on. And there were a few things that were put in the definitive edition that were, I guess, and I'm not the best person to speak to this because I don't really remember this.
I do feel like I remember this pretty well. Good. I pre-ordered the game as soon as it was available on the digital store, essentially, because I like that type of game. I read the premise. I read who was involved in making it, and they were old school developers. Yeah. So I knew exactly what I was getting into.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting some of what other people...
Tomb Raider knockoff or
apparently
people were thinking
thought
it was going to be.
That's what it was. I don't know. I guess they don't really read about these things. They're just like, hey, it's a game. I'll buy it, and hopefully it's like Tomb Raider. But essentially, I knew what I was getting into. I loved it. You liked Recore quite
amazing.
a bit.
It was such
we
a
both
game.
Can't wait. We're waiting for the X version to jump back in.
Yeah, so we were excited about the HDR update. Mm-hmm. Little did at least I know, or I remember, there had been some content originally on the original Recore release and on the game case of like another robot that you were supposed to get and maybe a little bit of the story or whatever. And again, I don't really remember that because that wasn't important to me. I got into that game and I just loved it.
That stuff came out after the game launched.
Yeah.
From my memory. I could be wrong.
So some people were upset when the Recore Definitive Edition was announced, and it's $19.99, which is cheap. I don't care what it is. That's crazy. Some people were upset saying, well, we were promised original content. Yeah. Are we going to get that for free if we were promised that content? And so the same person says, if Microsoft doesn't at least, that's all caps, give the content originally scheduled for the shipping version free to folks who bought it, there'll be a riot.
Oh my God.
So now he's yelling, at least, it's in caps, I take that to mean.
And look how complicated
and there'll be a riot.
Look how convoluted that tweet is.
If Microsoft doesn't at least give the content originally scheduled for the shipping version free to folks who bought it, there'll be a riot.
Shipping version. Yeah.
So, and how similar is this situation to the No Man's Sky situation that he shouldn't have even been commenting on?
It's weird, because that's like within a week of each other. These two tweets come out.
Yeah, so you're going to automatically assume... So you're going to say how great it was of the No Man's Sky developers to put their heads down for a year, which, by the way, is the same amount of time that the Recore developers did.
Very interesting.
You're going to say, wow, how great of them. Get less entitled. That was a real charity. And then you're going to turn around 2 days later and say, if they don't do that...
Get more entitled, gamers, as long as it's Microsoft.
If it's Microsoft and it's Recore, you should get more entitled. They should dang well be including that. That you were promised that.
Yeah. You
should be mad. But you shouldn't be mad at the No Man's Sky. Like, these tweets are within a few days of each other. Yeah. You can't make this up. So, that's interesting, and that's unfortunate that you have really big sites and you have really big influencers who really influence the opinions in gaming.
The plot is thickening as we continue to go along.
The plot continues to thicken, and we continue to have things that are connected to this.
Yep.
So, the same person puts out an editorial, basically, an opinion piece, that is quite aligned with several things we've seen lately.
So lately we've seen a lot of stories over, I'd say, mostly the last week. This happens a
lot this week.
Every year you see
up for a month
little bit of this. But over the last week we've seen a lot of these articles, I guess they're
written
opinion
articles.
pieces?
They're definitely opinion pieces. And they're talking about, so there's kind of two things we've been seeing. Some of them are talking about Microsoft should sell off Xbox.
Yes,
like
it's
in such a disaster state that we should sell Xbox.
Yeah.
Xbox is highly profitable, by the way. And
well, hold on. You can't just say that. You can't just put that out there and not explain things. So the 360, the previous generation, outsold their first generation by like 5 or 6 times, maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
Because we don't know like what they shipped at the end.
100% growth.
Yes, yeah. So it did very, very well and beat the previous generation, all right? So there's growth. Generation over generation, year over year. Then we know from all the NPDs and all the information that's released that both the PS4 and the Xbox One this generation has outsold the 2 previous predecessors from last generation, right?
Yep.
So they've improved upon that even. But even with all that, it's time to sell off the Xbox brand.
People are talking about this like Xbox is about to go under.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Which I think we got to say, like, I listen to some of the podcasts. You're a little bit more busy than me, so you don't get to listen to them all. Yeah. But I listen to a lot of some of these podcasts and some of these other things that are out there on YouTube and on Twitter.
And read a lot of the articles.
And I read pretty much every article I can get my hands on about anything gaming. Yeah. And some of the people on these podcasts have mentioned that they got a 2-hour show, so they got to have something to talk about. And so sometimes they are talking about these types of topics that we're talking about. What Xbox can do to improve things, and we're actually going to talk about that in our second video a little bit.
Yeah.
And what some of these other companies can do to improve things. So it kind of makes sense from YouTube guys. They're not working at IGN. Right. They're not working at GameSpot, Eurogamer, all the others.
They're not a media, self-proclaimed journalist saying, "Oh goodness, let me help you, let me fix."
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with suggestions.
Definitely. Yeah.
Microsoft and Xbox encourage suggestions.
They have a website dedicated to just that.
They have a website where you can go to give them suggestions about anything. That's their PC base and everything.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem. Suggestions are great. Mm-hmm. I would like to see, I think we all have something we'd like to see. Definitely. And I think we all know that Microsoft has worked very hard to give us those things. Yeah. All of these things.
Well, we'd all like to see 15 first-party games a year.
Of course.
You're not going to be able to play them all, but it'd be nice to have them there.
You're going to be 10-year backlog, but...
Yeah.
Suggestions are great, but when you have someone from a media site, and I'm going to read the title, I'm going to read the tweet title, and I'm going to read the article title because they're different, which is kind of weird. Xbox has a first-party games problem, but I have a suggestion to fix it. And then the article is titled, Opinion, How I'd Fix Xbox's First-Party Problem.
So the featured word in both is
I.
Yeah.
Me, little individual me. I am going to make some suggestions to help you, a $500 billion company, not go under.
So I'm going to do some charity work to help out Microsoft.
Me. That's why I'm working at IGN.
Clearly.
Because I know how to run a company.
They have struggled. So me, Ryan McCaffrey at IGN, I'm going to hook you guys up with some knowledge.
I am set up to run a company, run the Xbox division. I know all the things that go along with that. So there's that. Okay, yeah. It's hilarious.
It's already a laugh riot.
There should be a riot regarding this because...
Speaking of riots.
First of all, I I don't feel qualified. I actually do own a company, and I don't feel qualified to make suggestions to something as large as the Xbox division of Microsoft about how they ought to be running their business.
Yeah, well,
Not at all.
We don't give a lot of background about us, but I'll just say you run a company right now.
Yeah.
In the past, you've been in charge of running other companies for other people.
Right.
I've run other companies for other people. I've ran 2 businesses at the same time.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't dare send Phil, Spencer, or anybody, any of these execs, Yoshida, anyone.
No.
Here's my solutions for all of your problems right now. I know you guys aren't talking about this or having meetings on anything, so let me help you out.
I know you guys don't realize your company needs to be run and that there's decisions you should be making one way or another. But, and that's the irony is like I do run a company, so I don't feel qualified. I shouldn't feel qualified to say anything to these people. I know that they have decisions they have to make. There are realities behind all these things that we all want.
Yeah.
We can all dream big, but there are business realities to how things get done and how suggestions get taken. And so then he goes from, the hilariousness of just thinking of even writing this article to begin with to saying, this is supposed to be positive.
Yeah.
Right?
This is
supposed to be a positive article.
Yes.
Like, let me help you. This is a suggestion. And so the first thing that happens is he lists off all of the cancels and closes, of which there are very few considering how much moves around at Xbox. Yeah. I mean, a company of that size has many projects happening at once.
Yes.
So he lists off the cancels and the studio closes.
Yeah.
And I really feel like he did that to give himself permission because there isn't an issue to be writing about here.
You feel like he did it to give himself permission to offer his help to them. I feel like he did it very much to rub their nose in this thing.
Yeah, like here's the little bit of negative I can come up with, so let me just really...
Here's your mistakes and let me rub your face in it first. So I've got the superiority. I've got the high ground. You better listen to me.
Which is so... It was so unnecessary. It didn't fit anything.
Yeah.
So he starts out with that, like closed, canceled. It's in red print.
It's red, underlined. Yeah.
And then he proceeds to make 7 suggestions to how he would fix the first party. Here's the thing. We need to be very specific about what was titled and then what was introduced at the very beginning of the article.
So what was that?
Big budget first party exclusives. Big budget, that would have to mean AAA.
So 3 ticks, yes.
Yep. First party exclusives.
Yeah.
So if you write an article about how to fix the first party problem, wouldn't one of the prerequisites be that the discussion be based on first party?
First parties alone, right? Yeah.
One would think, right?
There's
so you can't fix the first party problem with a third party suggestion.
There were 7 suggestions.
So there's 7 suggestions, and I don't know that I counted how many were not first party, but they were not all first party.
Not only were they not all first party, some of the suggestions weren't even games.
Right, yeah. So reboot Fable at Rare, which I think everybody kind of knows is semi in the works or is something.
We've heard lots of rumors.
Again, small. Very small. So a lot of these suggestions are small. They're not big enough to fix a first-party problem at a massive company.
If Rare's doing it, it's not going to be a huge game.
It's something you want. Something you want to see. It's not going to fix a first-party problem if there were one.
Yeah, not at all.
Make a first-person Shadowrun RPG. Again,
Shadowrun, we're talking about a game from a while back. We're talking about a decade.
And then Crimson Skies is number 3, so you can blend those together.
Crimson Skies, that was weird. They were just like half a suggestion to this, half a suggestion of something else.
Yeah.
And Crimson Skies, like, it sounds to me like he's a really big fanboy, not of Xbox at all. Not of Microsoft as a company at all. But very specifically, the era which was the original Xbox, 2001 to 2004. Because that's where the bulk of his suggestions come from, is in that little period right there.
Yeah.
He mentioned Splinter Cell, Chaos Theory. Okay, that'd be nice. Yes, it'd be great to get another Splinter Cell. But that's not going to save the first-party problem. It's not even a first-party game.
Yeah.
How's it going to fix that? It belongs to Ubisoft.
It's terribly ironic. You're like, first party, big budget, AAA, first party exclusives. And you're like, Crimson Skies.
Crimson Skies, that's a small title. Yes, it was nice. I was there. I bought the game when it came out. First day it was out on the market.
Cool game.
Loved the game.
Not the point at all.
Yes.
But how is that going to fix? And then you have Alan Wake 2, just make it happen, it says. Alan Wake 2, just make it happen.
Despite the fact that they're working on other stuff
Again,
right now.
I think we would love that, but it's not going to make or break a business.
Alan Wake did not sell well.
Then Splinter Cell, which again is small.
Yeah.
So another small.
Well, a lot of people watching this might think Splinter Cell is big, but it's never really had huge sells. And in today's day and age, we know that
it's not what you think of as that first party AAA.
The three things that he mentioned are necessary.
Yeah.
We know from hearing stuff from developers, everyone's talked about this on different articles on the sites and YouTube as well.
Yeah.
That those games have to sell between 5 and 8 million just to break even, somewhere in that range. If they hit 5 million within 6 months, that's awesome. It's looking like not only is the game going to break even, but it's looking like it's going to make money over the next decade or however long it's licensed and on the market.
Yeah.
So we know that. Splinter Cell doesn't really command that range anymore, if it ever did.
No.
Yeah.
So it would be part of a plan that would have to have a lot of moving parts, which again, Microsoft has plans right now that have moving parts.
Yeah.
I think the funniest, though, besides how it ended, is the Sega thing.
Okay, so it's not necessarily a Sega thing. So this one suggestion what he's got makes absolutely no sense with his title of what the article is and what he's trying to say he's helping them with.
Definitely not going to fit the first party.
So, okay, so he wants, let me get this right. He wants Microsoft to call Tomonobu Itagaki, who did Ninja Gaiden, all right?
Yeah.
And when I'm reading this, I'm like, yeah, this would be awesome. But this is my dream come true. I love...
This sounds like an expensive and awesome dream.
I love that developer. I love that guy. He's an awesome dude.
Yeah.
Ninja Gaiden was amazing. Dead or Alive. All of his games, I've loved everything he's done. So, yes, I would like that. That would be cool. All right. So, get him on the phone, all right? Then get him to have his entire team, the Valhalla Games Studio, who recently did Devil's Third and it flopped. Let's get all of them, which... From what I understand, a lot of them do freelance work. They're not really like full-time employees, right?
That would
so
be
get everybody,
difficult rally
everyone up. Then, all right, instead of Ninja Gaiden, or what would make even more sense, a brand new IP, okay? Because they could just create that out of thin air.
Would be much easier.
Let's call Sega. All right, now we got a conference call with about 500 people. Let's call Sega and see if they'll agree to give them Shinobi, which was never a big title, never a big hit. And it's like from like the early 90s, late 80s.
Yeah.
So, what kind of dream world? How do you even get to the point to where you think this is?
So you've got to obtain an IP, which is very expensive, by the way. So whenever you think about how to help a business make profits, you definitely want to start by considering overhead.
Yeah.
Because you got to buy this IP, and then you got to convince this individual to do this, which also would be convincing with money. And then you have to give him a studio to do this in.
Yes.
So by the time you've done all that, where in the world does the profit come from?
You stand no chance at ever making
Zero
back.
profit.
And how does Sega? What is Sega going to say? You know what? We know that you're spending a lot of money on all this, so we're going to just give you the license.
Here it is.
We don't expect royalties. We don't expect a big check. Nothing. It's cool. Take it.
And there's all that.
This through?
I just realized that it starts with, in my humble opinion, this is what this is what they should do. So there's all that, but then keep in mind. What about that as first-party AAA big budget exclusive? Big budget, I'll give you that. AAA first, no.
You're talking about contracting what would essentially become a second party to take over.
You've got a second, third, fourth, and fifth party that you're going to try to merge into a. How does that fit the title?
This, if there was anything worse than this is basically insanity. Is what we're talking about. Yeah,
this is crazy.
I would want this article to be a parody piece. I would want this to be like some type of joke.
Yeah,
like
that
Onion.
Sounds like a joke. That literally sounds like in a perfect dream world. Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if you got this person to make that? Like we say that about movies. We're like, what if you got that director and you got that actor and then that actor, and they hate each other, by the way, and they're both like multi-millionaire actors, and we'll just get them all together.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what we'll do.
He's got to be a fan of what like Disney is doing with Marvel and all their cinematic universe, because that sounds about as complicated.
That's about that.
To get this game made.
And then the article ends with, "Your turn, Phil."
Your turn. So
if we didn't have a parody going, now we do.
So he thinks he's playing chess with Phil? Is that...
He thinks he just got a checkmate on Phil.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not a checkmate, but he
Balls
thinks
in your court.
He just, yeah.
Mr.
He just
Xbox.
proposed something that he would be a 50% proposal of.
Yeah.
I mean, really, really and truly, how egotistical of a statement is that?
Well, okay, but how do you get to a point in your time in your career where you have that big of an ego, where you think that you can say all these things, throw it out there, and now it's up to the head of Xbox.
He's literally he's like, all right. Look, I know you've run all these different divisions in this company, and I know that this is a massive company that's been run by people who know how to run a company, but I just made suggestions that no one has ever thought of, ever, in the whole history of this business. Nobody's ever thought of any of these things.
Yeah.
I am now giving you the gift of those suggestions. I'm not even charging you a copyright for this. I'm just putting them out there.
Do you know how many fanboys
Your turn.
work at Microsoft and have probably told the same stuff to Phil?
Every one of those points is probably mentioned 10 times a day in Microsoft.
Yeah.
Your move. Your turn, Phil.
Yeah.
Like, no, we don't have a 2-person game going here. These are suggestions that, first of all, they're not all first party AAA, so you have no business writing an article that's called that
is not even a games thing.
And then you have the issue of, you know, these are all small endeavors as far as like money in, money out. They're old endeavors. So it kind of sounds like, ironically, our Xbox guy
is an OG Xbox guy.
Guy, which wouldn't that mean, since OG Xbox was a solid like 10 years ago, would have
and it was a huge failure that cost them billions.
Yeah, so doesn't that mean he's not an Xbox guy? Because he's obviously not playing Xbox now.
Either that, or he secretly wants them to fail. Let's go drum up a bunch of ideas from the first Xbox that, you know, lost you money.
Truly, honestly, in the sense of parody, this article actually made me think that at one point. I was like, this sounds like what you would say if you were like trying to talk to someone who's never made a decision like this before, and you were trying to give them guidance that would cause them to fail.
Yeah.
And I don't think that was the intent. I think these are just his little individual dreams that...
Yeah, I think you're dead on that. And I think it's important to mention that we're having a laugh about this. We're trying to make this, you know, funny to us because it is funny to us. And we've already, you and I have already talked about this for like an hour and laughed about it.
Yeah.
But it's actually kind of not funny because this is a bigger systemic problem with the games industry and the media. And it's now spread to YouTube. A lot of the YouTubers are doing the same type of thing.
There's so much toxic, wrong information floating around. You've got big influencers at big sites doing editorials 10 times as often as they're doing unbiased news. I mean, there isn't really anything that's not got some shading of bias somewhere.
It seems like they've eliminated the just reporting.
There's no news. Yeah. There isn't any news.
The reporting
and
is
it's
gone.
Fine to have opinions. Obviously, our videos are based on opinion as well. You know, everybody kind of wants to know what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
But when you're being so adamant and using such strong and aggressive language toward people, you know, you're commanding that people have a certain opinion, and then you're making these laughable suggestions to this massive company who's doing very well. Mm-hmm. And it's just part of this big systemic problem of what is the, you know, calls themselves, because I wouldn't call them the gaming media.
You still refer to them as gaming media. I see everybody else still.
I often do this.
But I don't know if you've noticed, but I've changed my language around that. Now I just refer to them as the sites.
The sites.
They're the gaming sites.
Which is a fabulous way to refer to them, because they're definitely not the media.
And I'm not trying to be like facetious. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to like really.
You have a certain credibility base in order to do something like that. And I think, you know, we're getting really close to our 30-minute mark, and so we'll do our second video. But I think it's important to mention, again, first-party AAA big budget.
Yeah.
This year, Microsoft has Forza, am I correct? And Halo Wars 2 came out.
Yeah.
This year, Sony had Horizon Zero Dawn, and they have their Uncharted DLC that's kind of become a standalone game coming out. Those are two each. First-party AAA.
Yeah.
Last year... Microsoft had Gears 4, Forza Horizon 3, and Quantum Break. So that's 3.
Had 3 last year.
And PlayStation had Uncharted 4 and Last Guardian.
Yeah.
So you're saying we have a first-party games problem.
But it seems to be
but
pretty
we're on
close.
Pace with normal.
Yeah.
And next year there's like 4 or 5 first parties coming out for Microsoft.
Yeah.
So that's the really interesting thing is how do you get this, you have a first-party games problem when there doesn't seem to be one. So that seems to be normal. They seem to be right on pace with normal. So that's the other interesting part of this narrative that's spinning around.
And we're not saying there's not some problems there. All 3 of these platform holders, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, they all have some problems.
Of course.
And we're going to discuss that
but
in our
none of them
videos.
are dying out either or needing to be sold off. So our next video actually starts kind of right up there because we're going to talk about MPD and things related to that. So we will link our next video to the end of this video so that you can just click the button to go on for the rest of our weekly
They'll
recap.
both be connected.
That's it for this one, though. So we will put out 2 videos, both with our weekly recap. All right. Thanks for watching.